Hey, everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. As often happens with this show, most of my guests actually come from referrals from other guests. So one of the doctors that comes on the show quite frequently, who we adore, Dr. Vanessa Mendez, who founded a wonderful organization called Planted Forward, where you can have virtual consultations with many different types of doctors who are in different specialties, but plant-based or plant forward, if you will. That's how I heard about today's guest. Her name is Dr. Yolanda Caudill, but to her patients, she's known as Dr. Beet, and we're going to find out why. What's really cool about this doctor is she's board certified in lifestyle medicine, but as a pediatrician, which I don't think I have heard that combination before, because you probably think, well, how am I going to talk to kids about, diet, sleep, and exercise? Well, we'll certainly find out today. Please welcome her to the show. It's very nice to meet you.
Hello, Chef AJ. I'm so honored. This is like I'm dreaming that I'm here, that you're talking. I'm talking to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you for coming on and for taking time on your weekend to do this. I'm so intrigued because, a lot of times lifestyle medicine, it seems to lend itself to certain specialties, like, for example, primary care, internal medicine, maybe cardiology. But I don't know if I've heard of a pediatrician that's also board certified in lifestyle medicine, because you're probably talking not just to the children, but also to the parents, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, you can't change anything in the life of a child if the parents don't do it themselves. So as it often happens, I see myself talking to the parents as well. And, they have to learn to do the changes in order for the kids to adapt them. And like, as a physician, you want to be your best example of what you do. You teach your patients. Same thing with parents. I mean, you can't say, do as I say, no as I do. That doesn't work usually with kids. So.
No, I know. And my parents used to smoke and drink and say, well, don't you guys do that? And I'm like, but you're doing it.
Yeah, that doesn't work that well.
Not at all. So what do you want to talk about first? Your path to lifestyle medicine or your path to adopting a whole food plant-based diet?
Okay, well, they were linked. So I can start telling you why I end up where I am right now. I've been doing pediatrics for 30 something years. And when I started, there was no such thing. I mean, not like on an everyday basis of children with fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, or type 2 diabetes. And I still remember the time that there was an argument about that. No, this can be type 2. This has to be type 1 because, children don't have that. So long story short, this is something that all the doctors, pediatricians see as the norm right now. But I knew that that's not the way it should be. So I was very frustrated that I didn't have this way to get rid of, to help my children with obesity. So looking for that, I end up in a conference. My first lifestyle medicine conference was about the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine in Boston. So I went there. I had no idea what I was doing. It was the chef program was advertised and I had no idea. I don't like to cook myself. So I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought it would be, another way of helping. And I end up adapting and was like, oh my gosh, this is what I needed. Going to the conference, it sparked my life for medicine already all over again. So it was like that thing that I needed. You never hear like, oh, this medicine was this new pill to block cholesterol, and everybody's like very happy and like, no, it's okay. It was a new tool that we have. But when I did lifestyle medicine, it was like, wow, this is the tool that I need to help my parents, my patients. And then, like they said, doctors that don't smoke, they're more likely to promote that to their patients. Doctors that eat a certain way, they're more likely to promote it. So I said, if I'm going to promote this, I need to know myself. So I started doing it. I involved my husband and my daughter. She ended up doing the Ruby training in the process as well. So we were doing this. But my husband said, well, we're not going to be vegan or anything like that. No, we're not going to be doing that. I said, no, that's weird. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep eating the same. We're just going to eat more veggies and fruits. And he ended up getting rid of his cholesterol medication, and I end up losing 30 pounds, which I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for being healthy and learning the process. And I loved it. I loved the way I felt. I loved, had so much more energy, and end up doing that as a family. And then here we are 3 years later, and I love it. And I thought it was so much easier for me to put food on the table when I didn't have to defrost meat or anything. So I love it. I love the way I feel, and I love the way it made me find a new path in medicine. So,
well, you look great.
Thank you. Thank you.
How long ago was this?
That was 2018. That was December 2018. And in 2019, I took the board for lifestyle medicine. And then on 2021, I ended up opening the Tiny Beet, which I also was not looking to. I was perfectly comfortable being an employee and not being an owner of a business. But I realized that if I wanted to do this, I couldn't do it working for another person. I had to do it the way I thought, and it was different. So in that process, I discovered that I could do DPC, direct patient care, which is the way it made everything work. Because now I can have more time to work, to sit down and give 30 minutes to an hour to my patients to discuss, the constipation. That is usually the example that I put. A constipation kid, it's a visit, 15-minute visit. Okay, let's give you this medicine, eat more fruits and veggies, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, let's see. Oh, they're drinking, more milk, or they're not eating enough fruits. But why? He doesn't like them. Well, let's figure it out. Let's figure out a way that you can incorporate those fruits and veggies, and that the kid likes it. So I love to do that. And the other thing that is super interesting, by starting at learning about more plants, it became kind of like an adventure in the kitchen. Well, let's see what happens if we get this vegetable. What can you do with this vegetable? And it's like, I was never like that in the kitchen. And now I thought it was a very interesting process to do. So it's been a very, very interesting and healthy road for me and for my family and I.
Well, you live in Georgia. I'm curious, had you heard anything about a vegan or plant-based diet before that time? And I'm guessing probably not in medical school.
Nutrition in general, and in medical school, that was not, no. And that's one of the things that I find very interesting. When I came from the conference and I started talking to the parents about, so tell me about what you're cooking. And first of all, I've never talked to people about what they were cooking in the kitchen, because I was never interested about that. But I realized, wow, this is a different type of thing. This is not the regular medicine I've been doing for 30 years. Now I can be asking them, and then, okay, so you make those tacos. Why don't you do them like with just beans rather than, or just put less meat and put more beans, and that type of thing. So that was like, and learning about the food is medicine, food is truly medicine. And that's not emphasis that is given in medical school. So it was an eye-opening experience, and I love it.
Yeah. So have you noticed an increase in chronic diseases of adults in children?
Well, that's what led me here. That was, and definitely the type 2 diabetes, the liver, and obesity in general, and high blood pressure and all those things. So it's one of the things that I love about doing lifestyle medicine and having the time through my DPC practice is that, or through Planted Forward too, is another venue that I can help people in, also in the state of Florida. I can see patients. So one of the things has been that if I can impact this kid now, this kid that have the type 2 diabetes or the fatty liver, and then they go, or the family as such, they go on this road with me, I cannot make them like this and do it. But if they're like willing to work with me, I can change generations. Because if this kid changes the way he eats or she eats, it's gonna change the way his children or her children are gonna eat. So I can potentially change generations, and that is super cool. That's a super cool thing that I can say now, that before I could say, well, I treat the otitis, I cure the pneumonia, but thinking like I project, that benefit toward generations is an amazing feeling.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Well, so many parents say, well, my kid won't eat this healthy food, especially it's usually a vegetable, maybe even more so than a fruit. They're picky. What do you think about that? Because I once had a pediatrician say to me that, barring any kind of like autism or something, that there's no such thing as a picky eater, just one that is not yet hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, another pediatrician that I'm learning a lot from, and you probably know her, Dr. Yami Carsola. She's licensed medicine and pediatrics too. And Dr. Yum is another great pediatrician. Those two, I've learned a lot from them. And from the work of Dr. B, the gut doctor, fiber fuel guy, those books have taught me like how to incorporate different things. And what you do with the kids, you play with, you let them play with the food. And many times that's like a big no-no. But one of the things that parents need to know, that children are adapting their taste buds even in utero. Okay. So even when the mom is eating the apple and she's pregnant, that baby's tasting that apple. So it's gonna have a familiar taste when the baby's born. The other thing is, when you start doing the introduction of the solids, you start doing different variety of different vegetables. And if you start doing processed foods from the beginning, that's the taste buds that the kids are gonna adapt. But the fact that they're 10 and they're not adapted to that doesn't mean that they won't be able to. So we can go little by little. We can be doing, we let them play, let them participate in the food, in the food process. Let them choose what they want to try. Basically, there are many ways around that, but many times involve having them in the kitchen. That is actually Dr. Yum. It's one of the things that she teaches a lot about that. And Dr. Yami, in her book, there is great information on how you don't push children to eat what they don't want to eat. That's not even adults, shouldn't be forced to eat anything. So there are many ways that you can play around it, depending on what the kid wants.
That is fantastic. Do you offer any kind of like cooking instruction to your patients or recipes?
I share a lot of them, depending on what the kid needs and stuff like that. But I actually, one of the things that I envision is to be able to have some hands-on playing with the food and stuff like that experiences. I have a second floor of my office that's the vision that I have to use that space, is to have more involvement in the more hands-on experiences with the food in the office and things like that. Like sometimes you don't know what you don't know. I have no idea that they like this date balls that are, I don't know, they're so sweet and they're so delicious because they never try it, and you can make them and it's fun and it's very, very healthy. Or the smoothies, is another way to incorporate so many good things in children or the adolescents that are on the go and they don't, I have no time for breakfast. Just take this on the go, instead of a soda, just take this smoothie that has so many good things for you. So there are many ideas that sometimes the parents didn't think about it. So that's what I'm here for. help them out to figure it out. Depends on what the child wants.
Sure. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Michael Gorin, a pediatric obesity specialist at USC, who wrote a book called Sugar Proof. But I wonder how you feel on the sugar issue, because he feels, especially for children, it's really not a health food, and it really should be given very minimally, if at all.
Absolutely. Sugar is one of the first things I ask them to try to replace, okay, or to reduce. For example, if I always tell them, if they're, just to say a number, if they're drinking 10 sodas a day, just to say a number, okay, which I think is outrageous, but I'm sure people do. If you're drinking 10 sodas a day, why don't you space them out so you drink 9, okay, for example, and that's an adult usually doing that. But with children, the problem is so many foods have added sugar that if you don't read the label, you might never find out. You will be surprised. For goodness sake, why would you have to put sugar in peanut butter, for example?
Or tomato sauce.
Or anything. There's so many foods that they're so sweet by themselves. Coconut water. I grew up drinking coconut from the coconut. I'm from Puerto Rico. And that was the most delicious thing. And when I want to drink coconut water, I have to read so many labels to find one, unless I already know the brand that I'm looking for, because it makes me so mad. Why do you want something so good? Why do you want to mess up with that? And the children they get used to that sugary taste, but there are ways around it. There are ways to put that sugary taste through other foods. But the main thing is trying to eat not processed foods, because when you do that, you're not going to be adding loads of the sugar or the salt, for that matter. So that's one of the best ways. Cook at home and involve them in the kitchen, and whatever you're eating, whatever you're cooking is going to be better than if you bought it store-bought. And
amen to that. Whatever you cook is going to be better. That is for sure. And, he mentioned in his book that the artificial sweeteners are just as deleterious for young children.
Well, when it comes to children, one of the problems is that with adults, they do studies in adults and stuff like that. When it comes to children, many of these things have not been tested. And that's my concern when it comes with many, many things that are approved for adults. But, you're going to find out years from now that's what it was. So it's better not to use them as an experiment, and not having, if they don't want to drink water, for example, plain old water because it's boring or they're used to a taste or something, just squeeze some fruit or some raspberry, some lemon or something like that. Give it some natural taste to it, but don't add, get stuff like that we haven't tested in children. That would be a concern that I would have.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question from Susanna, who's watching live. First, she had made a comment saying that she loves your vision for future generations. Incredible work with the tiny beets. And she says her youngest child is 15. So just at the age of still seeing pediatric medicine. Mm-hmm. How do you suggest helping him convert to this way of eating when he's eaten a sad diet all his life? Mom is new to whole food plant-based.
Okay. Well, one of the first things, if she's doing that and she's new, that's by itself is going to help, because he's going to start seeing what she's doing, and just looking at how she's going to be changing, how she's going to have feeling more energy, and how I don't know if she needs to lose weight or not, but if she starts feeling healthier, that by itself is the best example. The best teaching that she can do for our children, for the children. But beside that is trying to get him involved in the kitchen. For some people, it helps to find substitutes to the regular foods. Like, for example, I like tacos and I want to have a version or bolognese, like spaghetti bolognese. And how do you do that with lentils instead of meat? For some people that works, but some people that doesn't work. But like, no, I'm never going to have the taste that I'm expecting. So find a new food altogether that you had no idea that you didn't exist. So let's do this. I don't know, this this bean brownies. I don't know, something that you never expect. One time, for example, for Father's Day or Mother's Day, my son was there with the whole family was there, and we prepared this tofu scrambled eggs. And my son was eating it, and everybody was talking about how delicious the tofu was. And he's like, no, I haven't tasted that. Nobody's gave me that yet. And we're like, that's what you're eating. He had no idea that what he was eating was not real eggs. So, and it was not like we were trying to trick him. It was just, we thought that everybody knew that that's what it was. So sometimes, like, getting exposed to, I don't say about tricking them, but just give it a try. Just get him involved in the process. And I think it can make a big difference because he might be more interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and also at his age, I mean, he's old enough to probably watch a documentary like Game Changers.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, he might be very interested in that one. And the other thing is, just up the game a little bit. If you love very sugary cereal in the morning, just put in there some bananas, some berries, some blueberries. That by itself, you're upgrading that bowl just a little bit more. You're getting some fiber in your system together with the sugar that you're drinking, that you're eating. So your taste buds start adapting to that fruit taste or that fiber. And so little by little, just a lot of patience, but definitely not pushing to do any changes. That I would never advise anybody.
That's not fantastic. How do you broach the subject of overweight or maybe even obesity with your patients? Because even adult doctors have trouble doing that with adult. I see these cards now that they offer for sale where a patient can hand it to the doctor and say, don't weigh me, you're shaming me. And when I've talked to doctors, they say, at least like with adult patients, sometimes weight is an important marker. Like if they're on a like Lasix or something, it's not just about trying to make a patient feel bad about their weight, but sometimes it is important. Yes. Or maybe not like if you're going to a dermatologist, but for certain doctors, it is important to know that. So how do you do that with a little one?
I'm glad you asked, because that's one of the biggest changes I've done in my career by doing the tiny beet is that I do it completely different. Because before, I mean, because I don't deal with an insurance that I have to have this certain vital signs at every visit, I determine, and me and the patient, we determine how we want to do things many times. So when I'm doing it, when I'm seeing a child, for example, for obesity, I need the weight. Yes, I need it. It determines medications, doses I'm going to give. I need it if I see that they're losing weight too fast or something like that. I need those parameters. I need to see how they're growing, how they're developing. So I do need the weight, but at least the baseline weight, and once a year for checkups. That's the minimum. Aside from that, I might not need it unless I see that they're losing too much or something. I might want to see that. But for the most part, I don't concentrate on that number. That number is very, very unimportant to me. So the number that I care is the number of hours that you're sleeping. That way I want to talk about. How are you sleeping? What is the quality? Are you really sleeping good? Do you wake up and you're rested, or you're trying to oversleep on the weekends and not, that type of situation. How are you managing stress? Are you for example, the good thing about lifestyle medicine is all the pillars integrate. So if you're doing some physical activity, that might help your sleep, and that might help your stress at the same time. So encouraging to get involved in those activities. If you learn how to manage stress by talking to your parents or talking to someone, that by itself might help you release the stress, which in turn might help your weight. But I try to do the things all around that has nothing to do with the weight itself. If the kid wants to know how much they weigh, yes, let's check your weight and see where you are. But I mean, many times, I remember, there are times that I had a kid that we weigh them, and then I spent 10 minutes trying to explain that that's not what I care. But since last visit, I gained or I didn't lose, and I've been doing this. Let's talk about the good things that you're doing. Let's forget about that. but it's hard to unsee that number because this is the first thing they have in their mind, that they have to lose weight. And sometimes that's not important. That I want to, because the stress is off the roof, or there are many other things. There are many other factors that are way more important than that. And that's what I love to do with the tiny Beet. I get to do that.
You see patients from like cradle to how old?
21
to 21. Okay. Because I'm sure hopefully you don't have to talk to them about not smoking or not vaping, we hope, and not drinking. But where does exercise come in? Because kids kind of just play. They don't necessarily have to formally exercise.
Ideally, that's the case. Play is so important for development, for the bone, for the strength of their bone. It's more important that fine-tuning how much calcium they're getting in their diet. Playing outside, getting exposure to the sun does the trick, and as long as they're having a source of calcium in their diet, that's beautiful. So play, it's so crucial for managing of stress, and not playing like being a kid and going outside and find worms and just climb trees and just being a kid and play with the neighbors. That is by far more important than having the kid involved in an organized sport, for example. If they do it, if they like it, if they're good, that's fantastic, that's great. But they have to play outside. Ideally 2 hours, minimum 1. But it is crucial for the development of their brain, for the development of their physical, their body, and for sleep too. And if they sleep good, they're going to be doing better in school as well. So everything is interconnected.
Nice.
It's crucial.
That's wonderful. Jerry says she loves your approach with your patients. And there's a question, where do you get your patients from?
Well, I have patients that have been following me since I moved here in Savannah about 14 years ago. And I have patients that they just like the approach to a more comprehensive approach to lifestyle, more in-depth knowledge of what's happening in the family. The way I do with lifestyle medicine is more like being the old-fashioned family doctor that it's very nosy and what's happening with the family and with the grandparents and how is that affecting the children. And I love to do that because to me, that's medicine. That's what medicine is all about, is spending more time one-on-one with my patient than what I'm spending putting codes in a system.
Yeah. So, do you have patients that like smoke or vape, and are you able to help them
I haven't had that many. There's usually vaping and sometimes they do some marijuana, but sometimes they don't tell you, even though it says no in the questionnaire. And even though I tell them, you can tell me, I know that many times they don't tell you. But yes, it's happened. Unfortunately, but there are many tools and many ways. And then when you get to know them a little bit better and spend more time, sometimes they're open up to you and they say, well, yeah, I tried it. But in pediatric, it's not a pillar that thankfully, that we have to be involved so much as with the other pillars, like physical activity, nutrition, sleep, management of stress, and missing one.
A social connection.
Connection. Yes.
So, but are there blood tests? Like if somebody were to withhold that information that they were smoking or vaping or drinking, are there blood tests where you can show that they are?
You can do I don't know if it'll show so much, but you can do a urinary test. But in adolescence, I've had through my career, many times the parents come to me and said, I want you to do a drug test, but don't tell him. It doesn't work like that. I can't do that. So, and I know as a parent how much you're itching to know, but the issue of trust is so crucial both ways. The issue that kid has to have the trust with you as a parent, and the trust with me as a doctor. Okay. So I don't like to lie to them the same way I don't like to a little one. I'm going to give you a shot and it's not going to hurt, for goodness sake. Of course it's going to hurt, but it's going to be quick. I promise that I'm going to make it quick. But, telling them this is not going to hurt and then it's going to hurt, they're not going to believe you when it really, you're going to do something that is not going to hurt. I'm like, no, she lies. That's not true. But especially within the parent and the child, it's so important that they said, okay, let's say we did the urine test and it came back positive. So what are you going to do with that information? You're going to be mad at the kid and you're going to be like, oh, I know. And no. So I tell them I can order it as long as we talk with the kid. We sit in the room and then we decide. And if the kid doesn't want it, and we're not going to push the kid to do it. Then you have to do more talking when you get home about that subject. So it's.
Well, so I start them with good habits when they're young, right?
Yes.
That would be the best. Even before you get.
And then, it's very interesting that I missed the communication side, because in pediatrics, that communication, it's from the discipline, for example, that having that trust of having, and I'm reading a lot of works from Dr. Siegel about no drama discipline, for example. And that approach is so much conducive to having a communication with your child that, for example, a tantrum is and I wish I knew that when my kids were growing up. It's I guess I could do a little bit of that whenever I have grandchildren, but it's so good to know that, for example, a kid has a tantrum and you assume it's whatever it is, but let's try to regulate his emotions. Let's try for us to regulate our emotions before we try to deal with that kid. And that approach on the long run, and I've seen families that adopt that when they're adolescents, you already have that trust that I know I'm not feeling well and you're not just, it's not that approach that I am the boss of you and you're going to do whatever I say because I say so. It's more, okay, let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation. And for adolescents, that comes a long way.
Randy's making a comment that her 5-year-old granddaughter was talking to her on FaceTime today that she had cereal for breakfast, and I know sugar is not good for me. I said, you are so right. Her mom tries, but ...
Yes, yes. But one thing that as parents, and especially as a 5-year-old parent, you have the power of doing the groceries, So it's funny that when my kids were growing up, the trans fat was not written as such in the labels. So you have to look for partially hydrogenated fatty acids. And I taught them to look at that in the labels. If you want a cereal that we're going to buy, you have to read to me. You have to look at the label that it doesn't say that. So it was so funny. We were at the grocery shopping and then they see a new cereal or something. And then it couldn't have sugar at the beginning. And they had to have, they knew already which, criteria or something. So they were looking at that. Mom, what do you think about this cereal? And I'm like, you tell me, do you think we can buy that? And they look at it and they see the long word, the trans fatty acids. And they're like, oh, no. And they put it back. No arguments, no nothing. They knew it was not a thing that we would eat in the house. And we had a boring house. Even though we were not plant-based or anything like that, my house was boring because it didn't have all the sweets. And I think we had a lot of stuff that we shouldn't have had. But, it was a boring house because we didn't have all the sugary cereals in our house. And, but, they grew up to learn that there's certain foods that are better than others. And but there's not like it's a forbidden food like that. That wasn't like, we don't eat this thing. Oh yeah, you can have some of that, but we're not have it every day. Right. Like if we had some sodas because there was a party in the house or something, and there was some extra soda, it would go to the trash. You're going to throw that away? Yes, we're going to throw that away because every time that we sit down for dinner, can we have sodas? Isn't there? They keep looking at that. So if I don't want them to eat it, I mean, especially on a regular basis, I don't bring it home. And I have the fruits front and center. They're right there where everybody goes by. And if you're hungry, oh, there's nothing in here. There's no snacks. Did you see the apples? They're washed and they're ready to be eaten. Well, then you're not hungry. Then that's okay. Go play. You're not
Well,
hungry.
you hit on the $1 million solution that I've been telling everybody from years. It's if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. If you don't want to eat it, if you don't want your family to eat it, stop buying it. They're not the ones going to the store and getting
Not
it.
only that, something that frightens me a lot is when parents say, you know, I tell the kid, yeah, we're looking at a kid that is gaining weight, and they say, you see, I told you not to keep eating the cake or not to keep eating and it makes me upset because you cannot single out a child. If it's in the house, it's for everybody to consume. You cannot, if you don't think it's good for your kid, it's not good for anyone in the house. So bring it or not. If it's in there, if you bring a big box of donuts, it's for everybody to consume. Enjoy it, but don't bring it every day or every week if you don't want them, you know. But yes, absolutely. If it's in your house, it's in your mouth. That's very right.
Couldn't agree more. Whole Food Plant-Based for Life, who's watching live, says, are there vitamins that are recommended for plant-based children?
Well, usually B12 and vitamin D, depending if there are some children that are very, very active outside, then they might not need it. So I determine that on a case-by-case basis. But B12 is usually the most common recommendation, even though they can have some sources, but just to be certain. Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Dee Dee wants to know, does excessive weight that is gained in childhood stick with you forever? It did me until
It can, but it doesn't have to be like that. And the good thing is if you can teach them how to be, and it's like, for example, there are some children that seem to be above their BMI in weight, but they're ridiculously active. You know, they're very, very, very active, and they have they sleep good and everything like that. As long as the labs are not concerning, I'm not too worried about that. I'm worried if the BMI starts skyrocketing and now I want to look into what happened there. But other than that, if the child is above the graph, but it's moving on with the graph and very healthy, actively, and they're not eating, they're eating a balanced diet. They're having, everybody, because I'm plant-based, it's not that I want everybody to eat the way I do. Absolutely not. You can be very healthy. There are many areas of the world, the blue zones, that eat it's not just plant-based, but plant is predominant in their plate. And that's how I wanted to make sure that they have a variety of plants. And I tell them, if you happen to have an apple and an orange in the house, instead of eating 2 apples, try to eat an apple and orange. So you have variety, because that's good for your gut as well. The variety of plants.
Great. Question from, who's it from? Are there studies about sugar contributing to hyperactivity in children?
Yes, there's some people that there's some debate on that, but there's some families that notice a big difference in that. And like we said, it's not that they need that anyways. So if you see that the kid I wouldn't recommend it. It's the same way that, for example, we go back to what is the food is in the house, the food that the people buy. Some parents have one child that is ridiculously skinny and the other one is overweight. So you don't tailor the food for either one. You bring the same thing that is healthy for everybody. So even if the child is not hyperactive, or it is, sugar is not something that they need to be consuming, okay? So why would you have it in their diet? And the same way, a child that is very skinny is not going to benefit from having a very fatty food or high in sodium or high in processed foods any more than the other kid. So if it's not good for one, it's not good. And sugar, they don't need it. I have a sweet tooth. I love to have, but then I discover the wonders of dates and the wonder that a banana can do in your oatmeal. My goodness, who needs sugar? So and then the good thing is that the taste buds do change. I have, you adapt to less sugar and eventually you realize, oh, that is too sweet and it has a little bit of added sugar. You didn't realize that, oh, what is this? This has sugar. I had no idea. But for me now, it's extremely sweet compared to in the past would have been like normal. But the taste buds adapt for good and for bad.
Great. Colleen says, where can I take my type 1 diabetic son that will help treat him naturally? Or could you do a consultation? She lives in Montana.
Well, for type 1 diabetes, those children need to see an endocrinologist. That's a different ballgame. That is a kid that needs insulin. So they can certainly benefit like any other child, again, from eating more plants, absolutely. But it's not like the type 2 diabetes kid that you can expect that this might get better or get resolved with changes in the weight, with changes in the diet. Type 2 is a different ballgame. That kid needs to be as pediatrics endocrinologist to help you deal with that. And then they can help you with the diet through that specialist. But that's not a kid that I would, no, I don't have the specialty to deal with, no.
Thank you. Susanna wants to know, do you have experience with teens and diet helping reduce their symptoms of things like ADHD or even autism?
There are some studies and there are some people that have noticed that children, when you reduce the processed foods, these children they behave better. It does help them regulate much better. The children with autism, ADHD too. But the other thing in ADHD or ADD is, for example, there are some things that, again, we go back to the lifestyle medicine pillars. Sleep, especially in adolescents, is so it can be so terrible. And sometimes you do a little bit with the diet, and then you do a little bit with improving their sleep quality and quantity. And then they realize, oh my goodness, I can do it so much better in school. And, ADD, ADHD could be genetic. So it's not that it might be getting rid of the medication altogether, but who knows? Who knows that they might feel up to some level that they can control some of the symptoms and the rest is management of lifestyle habits. And, I love sleep. I could be talking long time about how that is important. And in children, for example, they've done studies and they've done in cities where the children have the later start of the day in school, and they're doing so much better. And they have, for example, less accidents in adolescents because they're driving awake. Who knew? So yes, there are many ways that they can help, and even depression and anxiety. For example, when you improve your microbiome, when you improve your sleep as well. Again, I come back to sleep. Depression and anxiety can get so much better.
Yeah. What about caffeine in kids? Kids drink Red Bull a lot,
It hurts me. Caffeine, I don't recommend it in children, period. If they have caffeine because they have some chocolate, for example, that's a different story, or some tea that has caffeine. But aside from that, that's not a drink for adolescents or anything. And then again, sometimes you see the adolescents drinking these drinks because they didn't have enough sleep. So they're doing that to stay awake, to keep up with the demands of life. But if they had enough sleep to begin with, maybe they didn't feel they had the need to do that. So we go back to lifestyle habits, did they, let's talk a little bit about that. Maybe we can fix that. Maybe you can do this better.
Great, thanks. Here's a very astute comment from Brandy. A parent that's asking for a drug test probably already knows the answer.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you don't want to hear it. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So Stacy says, what do you recommend for chronic constipation? We get a lot of fiber, but it's an issue in their 12-year-old that's happened since birth.
One question that I have in children is the consumption of dairy. It comes up a lot. If they're having too much dairy, sometimes that is the problem. If they can't fix it with, that a lot of, but that's usually, that's one of the most common things that we see. And as a matter of fact, sometimes they get anemia because they drink too much dairy, and then there's some micro bleeding in the intestine that causes them to lose blood in the stool that parents are not aware of, and it could cause severe anemia. But that would be my first question. I would ask more about the dairy intake.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dairy, the next question from Sharon is, what do you give a 16-month-old in place of cow's milk? And are you able to articulate to parents that it is not necessary? Because, there are some pediatricians that basically shame parents for wanting their kids to not have cow's milk.
Yes. I grew up with, my dad would have probably better off having a couple of cows in our backyard, because we were 4 kids that would drink milk rather than drinking water. And it's funny because I was talking to my daughter how I noticed that, for example, when I had a cold, it would get me a lot of phlegm right after I drink the milk, I would start coughing more. But I never told my mom. I noticed that right away. I was a kid, but I didn't tell her because she's going to tell me, don't drink the milk. And I loved it too much. So milk as a pediatrician, personally, it was very hard for me to get to understand that it's not really something that the kids need. Okay. The milk that they need is the breast milk. And after the year or so, we can part ways without dairy in general. But how do you, what the question was, like, how do you get rid of it, or how?
Yeah.
Well, you can just switch to something like soy milk, and that has been proven that it is not harmful for a kid, or another nut milk, or some other type of yogurts also. But you could, there's so many children around the world that are raised without milk, and they grow very, very healthy. As a matter of fact, there's some places that have a high consumption of dairy and have a very high incidence of fractures. And so going back to what helps, you can have the calcium from other sources, of plants. And in addition to that, if you're worried about their bones, send them out to play. Don't let them play too much in the video games. Send them out to jump and play, like jumping like rabbits outside, and that's going to make the bones very strong. Yeah. The exposure to the sun and the jumping.
Susanna says the content that you offer would make a great handbook to hand to new parents, and you can call it The Tiny Beet: Lifestyle Medicine from Birth for Lifelong Health.
Good idea. You see, my daughter, all my kids' work had to do with the Tiny Beet. My daughter is a graphic designer, and she did the branding and all this, and she loves to hear ideas like this to create things. My son did the website, he's a coder, and my youngest, she's in charge of the social media. So the 3 of them are very involved. And then when you hear things like that, they love these ideas. Thank you.
Great. Do you wish you had this information before and maybe could have raised your kids this way?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Even though I always thought that we were eating healthy in my house, we were, just because we didn't have sodas, that was not something that it was in the house. But it definitely, I I would have loved to give them more fiber, more foods. And we did a lot of packaged stuff because I had to cook very quickly. And now I know how to, you can go around that, like batch cooking. I didn't know any of that. I learned that in that meeting in Boston, 2018. That's when I heard that for the first time. I was like, what? That's great to know. For a busy parent, this is priceless to know this information. But it's never too late. No,
when you changed your diet, did you change it all at once? Tell us what that looked like.
No. We didn't want to be vegan. We were little by little. We were learning, and I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to. It was adapting to these different vegetables and learning how to cook them. We've always had beans because I'm from Puerto Rico. And my father makes the meanest beans that you can ever have. So I've grew up with around beans, usually red kidney beans. But so legumes, putting them in the menu was easy. It's the other stuff. But then I realized it was like eating side dishes. It was kind of like Thanksgiving every day. This is a lot of side dishes. We can have sweet potato, we can have this. I mean, and if I have the quinoa, it's done very quickly. I still cannot make, it's very hard for me to do brown rice. I have a way to do it in the oven, but other than that, or in the rice cooker. Other than that, I don't know how to make it. But other than that, quinoa, bulgur. I learned about bulgur when I went to that conference, and it's such a lifesaver when you want to cook in a very quickly. So there are many ways. And then sometimes, for example, they call it cowboy caviar or something like that. This is a meal that you can open a lot of cans, and you can have a very healthy meal in no time. And some people think that you have to cook or you have to. Those are the things that it took me a while to learn, but we love it. It is fantastic. And it's very interesting when we have people to eat that don't eat like that, then they're like, oh gosh, what are we going to eat in this house? And then they're surprised, like, oh, this wasn't bad. This came out good. This is good food. Yeah, you can eat good and taste very, very, very good.
And I remember when I was little at the pediatrician's office, if you got a shot, you got a lollipop.
Mm-hmm. Here they get stickers. My pediatrician gave me lollipops or balloons, and they're dangerous too because kids choke with those. So I can't do those. So they get stickers, and they get I give them things that they can color, like things like that. They look forward to that. And you know what they have? They get fruits. I have always fresh fruits for them also. And it's funny because I had a 3-year-old that I saw a couple days ago, and I left in a rush and I didn't bring the fruits. She was disappointed. I felt so bad that she didn't get her fruits. I felt so good and so bad. I was like, this is wonderful that she's expecting to have fruits on her way out, just like she gets her stickers. But the father told me she's disappointed that she didn't have the fruits. I was like, yes, this is wonderful.
That's great. Lavonda wants to know, does your daughter do graphic design for other people as well?
She can. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Well, if you want to tell us, if we can put the link in the show note if you like, or just tell us.
I don't know her name specifically that she uses. We can put it in the links in the show notes. Her name is Rivera-Caudill.
Thank you. Here's a question. Do you post any of your family recipes on any of your social media sites?
Sometimes, and actually last weekend we had we went to the farmer's market and we got this pasta and they got these beautiful mushrooms, So we made this sauce from scratch, and we overcooked the pasta, by the way. That's why, I'm not very good in the kitchen still, But anyways, it tasted very good. So they're gonna post those things.
And what are your social media sites? Because I don't think you gave them to me.
The Tiny Beet, the Dr. Beet is the name of in Instagram, the Dr. Beet.
Is it DR or DOCTOR?
DOCTOR.
Okay, I'll get the link and I'll post it. Thank you.
The Dr. Beet.
I see it now. The Tiny Beet Pediatrics. Very nice. Okay, we can post that for sure. I don't know if you watch the show, but one of the questions, like I think every guest has gotten, because people really are interested, is what do you eat in a day?
What do I eat? Well, usually I eat for breakfast, I have oatmeal.
Everybody has oatmeal. Why is it? I just don't get it. I hate oatmeal. I'm so sorry. I don't get why it's so popular in this world.
You can do so much variety of it. We have actually, when we started doing plant-based, one of the things we did was an oatmeal bar in there, because I realized that everybody was putting things away from the pantry, and then they left it in there. So I said, no, this is not working. So we have this canisters on top of the counter, and it has the chia seeds, it has the flax seeds, it has the raisins, it has all of the things there, and you cook it in there, and you on your way, or we do overnight, or I do a toast, like a whole grain toast, and with usually almond butter, and I spread that doesn't have added sugar, and I put all the seeds in there. It looks like it's an open, sometimes I can fold it, and I love it. And I put the berries in there, and I put everything that I put in my oatmeal pretty much, but I put it in the toast. So those are usually my two things. Or sometimes in the weekends we do pancakes or something else, or the scrambled eggs, the tofu, but that's usually for weekends.
Wow. And so
through the day, depends. I usually bring whatever we did for dinner, for lunch, or I have, like usually I try to have greens as much as I can every day. If it's not for lunch, it's for dinner, or sometimes for both. And it depends what we decide to do, some pasta with some sauce or whatever from scratch. We try to put, if we have pasta, or some rice and beans is usually the go-to thing that is easy, the brown rice and beans, and you can do whatever vegetable we have in there. Sometimes we plan ahead, and I'm living with some relatives now, so it's good that we get to cook together. It's so we're using the new cookbook from Dr. B, the 5-Year Fuel new cookbook. We're using a lot of those, or tried several of those. And like the other one, the recipes were delicious. We're using a lot of those. That's what we've been doing lately in the house, and they're really good.
Yeah. Lavanda says the oatmeal bar is a great idea.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It sold me so much complaining that, oh my gosh, you left this out. It's fantastic. My family, use it every day.
Somebody's asking for your dad's recipe, mean bean recipe.
For the mean bean, everything is from scratch, and then he puts in there everything. And it's funny because he normally would put a ham on it, but when they moved to my house, they were living with us for almost 2 years, because my mom came to be treated for cancer, and they were living with us and then COVID came, so they had to stay a little bit longer. And he was like, but they're not going to be tasting good if I don't put the ham on it. I said, Dad, I'm sure they will. We do sofrito. That's what I think is probably one of the key ingredients for almost all Puerto Rican dishes. And the sofrito is onions, garlic, pepper, nothing spicy, just green peppers or whatever peppers you have. And the culantro and cilantro. And usually and then some other sweet peppers that you can find in Puerto Rico. But basically you put that in the blender or in the food processor, and you save those. You freeze those in ice cubes, and you would use however many of those you need to cook, and that is the base of everything. And then you can put on it. He puts sometimes plantains. He likes to the green plantains. He likes to shred it and put it in there, or makes it balls. Oh my God, he does a lot of varieties, but I don't know. I think it's love the main ingredient.
That's neat. Do you have time to exercise?
Not as much as I want to, and I no, not as much as I will know I need. I'm not an exercise person, so I like to walk, and I try to do that in the morning depending on my schedule. And I recently started going to the Y because I know, I mean, I always say that I have wimpy like arms, so I need strengthening and cardiovascular strength. So I'm started to go to the Y. They have something called the E-Gym, and I started to do it, and it felt so good to do it. I was like, this is so stupid not to do it more often. So yes, I'm starting to be more responsible about that. Because
as a pediatrician, I almost was going to ask you, do you have time to go outside and play?
Well, I don't play much. I mean, I like to ride my bicycle. That I feel like a kid when I do that. I do feel like I'm back to be a kid.
There's a question if you can discuss your journey from conventional medicine to lifestyle plant-based medicine. What was your biggest challenge? Great question. Thank you.
My biggest challenge was to find to see how I was going to be able professionally, like in the how I would be able to integrate that in the day-by-day living in a 15-minute period of visit that I had. That's why I had to go by myself, because trying to keep doing it as the traditional medicine that I've been doing for 30 something years, I love to talk, period. I love to talk, and I was always getting in trouble. I was always throwing Peter to pay Paul to try to stay with the patient a little bit longer. So I wanted to give more time, and I figured out the only way to do it was through direct patient care model. And this way I can dedicate the time to do that. But that was when the trend, when I realized that lifestyle medicine is what I had to do it. I could not die without giving it a try, because it was so, I mean, it really changed my life. That not just because it changed my life physically, it changed the way I want to practice medicine. And once I did it, once I decided I had to do it, I have to figure out how. It was through direct patient care that I'm able to spend the time with my patients.
All right. And have you been able to influence any colleagues at all?
I don't know. I know for example, people that, I don't know about my colleagues, but I know about friends and family members that they started seeing how this is working for us, and they give it a try, and they like, yeah, this is easier than I thought. I can do this. And sometimes, it make for many family members, for example, it's hard for them to think when we go to eat, oh gosh, the Caudills are coming. What are we going to cook for them? And I said, no, you're just rice and beans. You have rice and beans, we have food or a salad, whatever. So it's the only thing that people still like, do not know. But I don't know about colleagues yet. I haven't asked.
Right. Well, because you don't have like a traditional hospital practice where you're like hanging out with doctors.
No, so by myself. No.
Yeah. So, it's a little bit harder. Let's see.
Yeah.
Diane says, if you could give parents of young children 1 or 2 bits of advice on transitioning to a whole food plant-based way of eating, what would that be?
Involve them in the kitchen. That's the first and foremost. You want them to be, they're more like it. They're probably going to be more daring to try something if they were involved in making it. And sites like Dr. Yum's website, I go back because she has so many ideas. They can create their meal and they cook it, and then they can judge it like a one of those people that test recipes, and they said, oh, this was, and then you can play with them. Okay. Okay, you're going to be the chef. So what do I put in here? You make it fun. It's not like, and then, they might just try a little bit, might be less of try it. They might be more willing to try it because, oh, wow, we make this. And then they can share the recipe. Oh, I made this. I remember my son did a smoothie one time, and then he wrote it down with all the ingredients for me to keep it with my recipes, because this was a good smoothie that he made, and we still keep that. So sometimes, encouraging, if we make this, it tastes good. If you like it, then we can share it with grandma, so they can make it there. When you're there, you can make it with them. Let's give them the recipe, things like that, getting them involved with the foods. And there's some kids that, like you mentioned, kids with that have sensory problems. Sometimes it's way harder, but they, through the help of occupational therapists and speech therapists, they can help teach them how to be exposed to that. And one of the things is just licking them, smelling the fruit, just getting accustomed to, and to be around that is around. And then my parents are eating them. And again, it's much easier when you're not, when you're hungry to try something new. So if you filled up your tummy with something that is processed, your taste buds are going to be different, and you're not more. So if that's the first thing, I've hear, for example, parents like, oh no, don't eat this fruit because you're going to eat pizza. We're going to eat pizza. Let's have them the fruit, let them have the fruit, and then they will eat less of the pizza. Probably this is better, has more fiber.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Yeah, I bet you're a wonderful doctor. I'm too old to see you, but I was thinking about when you talked about weighing the kids, I'm sure you take their height measurement too, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and nobody complains about that. And they don't say, well, you're height shaming me,
I know.
It's so interesting.
Culturally is very sad. Weight has been too linked to beauty, to the concept of beauty or not. And that's one of the things that if children, or, that's a different change altogether, but you could be a beautiful human being. Doesn't matter how much you weigh, for goodness sake. That doesn't define you. What defines you is if you're a caring person, or you're, when you put so much importance in that thing, you take away from other gifts that you have. That you could be a very creative person, but you're thinking so much about how you look in front of the mirror. You're putting so much energy to that, when you could be more creative. And when you release that stress from that part of your life, maybe you have, you would be more willing to try other things and feel happier. When you're feeling happier, you have more energy to do exercise, for example. So it's all so connected.
But do you think also like height isn't as risk to development of chronic medical diseases as weight can be a marker for that? Maybe that's
why we need the graphs. That's why we need to weigh them and measure them. I mean, it depends on the age, because the little ones we do that more often. But once they're 3-year-olds, we start at least once a year. We need to know they're growing in height and weight. Right. That's development right in there. And
when you think about it, from the minute you're born, they smack you on the butt and they weigh you. I mean, you start out being weighed, like you don't seem to have a choice.
I know.
Here's a great question from Randy. How do you counsel the family when one parent is plant-based and one is not for the children? Mom is trying with the kids, but they see dad's meals that he cooks himself. So they're getting mixed messages.
Well, yes. Again, it's not that they're exposed to other foods. It's just like, what are they going to see from each parent? I mean, I wouldn't think they're mutually exclusive. I've seen parents doing that, and eventually, I don't think fighting about it, no matter what, it's not going to be a good situation for the kids, for anybody, for the parents either. But just learning to cohabitate with those diets is going to be crucial for the family in general. So having them, again, exposed to the good stuff and trying, maybe there is a compromise. If both parents like to cook, let's not bring processed stuff in the house. Let's cook them all, and that is a big compromise. Like we said at the beginning, it doesn't matter. It's going to be way better than if you got the processed stuff. So that would be the compromise that I was like, okay, yeah. And then in the plate of the kids having, that is mostly, it doesn't matter what that made a very greasy lasagna, for example, but have some salad with it or have some vegetables with it.
I think getting kids to eat vegetables, well, getting anybody to eat vegetables is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it is. It is. If you're not growing up with that, but many times you'll be surprised. Children that grow up like that, they like their trees, the broccoli. They like to eat their trees. They love trees. They love the broccoli and things like that. And they like salad, like there's nobody's business. And so it's a matter of getting them exposed to and letting them, their taste buds adapt to that. It can take like 10 days, sometimes more, of something, even a baby, that being exposed to the same taste buds adapt much easier than people think, much easier.
Right. Somebody's asking if probiotics are good for children.
If they're eating the vegetables and the fruits, that's the prebiotics they need, and they're feeding their gut microorganisms, they're going to be fine. They don't need that.
Great. Well, thank you for what you do.
Thank you. You're welcome. I love it. I'm so blessed to be that I chose pediatrics, and then that I found lifestyle medicine is a blessing, truly.
Yeah. Well, if your dad wants to come on the show and make his famous bean dish, that'd be really fun.
Oh gosh, he would.
I'll tell you, that sounds great. Mean bean to make you lean. Yeah.
Oh.
So nice to meet you,
Nice
Doc.
to meet you.
Well, okay, one more question. I don't really like going here, but because you don't know the case, but Janet's saying the children who died because the parents are vegan. That is not, it's not because they were vegan. I think it's because
that's happened, those things have happened in the past. I don't know which case you're talking about. I haven't heard of that lately, but I remember living in Florida, it happened years ago, and I think they were in a raw diet, and so it's not that kids don't die in a vegan diet. That must have been something really, really going really wrong for that to happen. So absolutely not. That's not. There's something very wrong that was done and I don't know. I don't even know which case is that, but I know that that's not. Some people haven't even checked, their kids' blood levels or something. There was something. Maybe the kids had some genetic problem. I don't know. I don't know that because I don't know where
you can't. You weren't the doctor, and we can't comment because we weren't there. And there's probably a lot more.
Children can be raised very healthy and on a plant-based diet. Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that. And where is your practice? People are asking your in-person practice.
It's in Savannah, Georgia. It's Whitmarsh Island in Savannah, Georgia. And then telemedicine through Planted Forward and Florida and Georgia.
Oh, so just those two states, Florida and Georgia for telemedicine.
So far those two. Some might come, but so far those two.
Thank you for clarifying. Well, it's been lots of fun getting to know you.
Likewise.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Beet.
Thank you so much. Bye.
My pleasure. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow an hour earlier at 10 a.m. when we have none other than Dr. John McDougall, and he will be talking about supplements. Should we take them? Should we not?